Okay. Hi, LeUyen. How are you?
I'm good, Doug. How are you doing?
Doing fine, thank you. Wow, I see all your drawings and everything up in the back. Very cool.
Yeah, it's my studio space. It's funny
Okay.
with all this filming from home, everyone gets to look into and see sort of all your personal space.
Oh, absolutely. And you got to be careful what's up in the background in case you don't want the whole world to see it.
You're right. I'm suddenly wondering whether or not
But
I
no,
could put
that looks
something up
good,
there.
and it's perfectly it's relevant because we're going to talk about your work. And I did have a quick funny story about that, if you don't mind. I had a woman on. I won't mention her name, but behind her was like big metal shelving units completely
Mhm.
covering the back wall behind her. And on those shelving units was nothing but jumbo packs of toilet paper. She must have had 500 rolls of toilet paper. And when she turned the camera on, I just kind of was like, "Oh my god. Do you really want that going out to the entire world? Is that really what you want people to see?" She had no clue. She was like, "Oh, geez. Oh." So I said, "Go get a big blanket or something and just throw it over So she did, and it was fine. But some people just
Oh,
don't know what's behind them.
I thought you were going to tell me that it was relevant to the story, and she put it up as a prop. And I wanted to say, so that's where all the toilet paper went. I wondered why I couldn't buy it for a while there. She was stockpiling it.
She was definitely stockpiling. She looked like the behind her looked like she was doing the show from a Costco aisle. It really did. It was
It's an
amazing.
odd place to decide to put the camera in your house. Wow.
So, anyways, we digress. You are an illustrator, and let's see, according to your bio, more than 100 books, children's books. Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
made a
very
lot of
cool.
books over the years.
Well, I'm looking at your
That's
drawings on the wall. They're very good.
well, there's a cat up there that's drawn by a fan of mine, so you can't take all of them, but the rest of them are mine, pretty much.
The color ones are yours. The
The colored ones are mine.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, great. So, what sort of books? What sort of books are these? Do you write the books, or do you just do the animation for it?
So I mostly illustrate. I've done I think the number is 123 books, which is a lot of books. It's not a normal number. I think there may be two or three other people in the industry who've done as many books and are still alive. Um, but I mostly illustrate them. I write very few books. I'm very, very shy with my writing, and I think I tend to be a lot more careful with choosing just the right words. But illustrations, I mean, that's pretty much how I tell my stories is through all my drawings. So yeah, mostly just illustrations. And now that I've been in the industry for long enough, I tend to illustrate a lot of books with writers who are really good friends. So it's reached a lovely level in my career where I get to sort of pick who I want to work with, and I get to really enjoy these projects, and really spend time with people I love doing books for kids that are great. It's a great job.
Well, I was going to ask you a little bit about that because if you started out, I assume you started out as a kid, just drawing and right.
I think about that. Yeah, I did. Yeah, I've been drawing since I was well, gosh, as long as I can remember, as long as I've been holding a pencil. And I was always that kid, that class artist in the classroom. When I was younger, though, we had come from Vietnam during the war, and it was, and we came over. We were not very wealthy. We were Salvation Army families, basically, like the churches would sponsor us and stuff. And I was really anxious to be able to fit in with so many of my friends who, looked down on the Salvation Army or Kmart and all that. And I think drawing was sort of my way to escape all that too. It was a way to get them to appreciate me for past what I look like and more into what it is that I could do. So I've been using drawing as an expression of myself for for as long as I've been alive, I guess.
That is actually not that uncommon though for people, and I consider art, literal art, like what you're doing, in the same group as performing artists. But that tends to be a common thread between artists in general is that they use their art as sort of an escape from where they came from, where their situation was, or just as a way to, I don't want to say revenge, because that's not exactly the word I'm looking for. But just kind of like maybe they felt like, they could have been bullied in school, or they could have been the one in class that everybody didn't like, or something like that. But they had this gift, and the gift was an escape, and a gift was a way to get attention and get them sort of noticed, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would actually take it even one step further. There's something, I think when I was a kid, I wanted to be able to make myself seem different than other kids, like in a good way, not in a bad way, not because I wasn't dressed well or because I didn't know the latest songs, but in a way that made other people look at you and want to know you a little better. And I think I used my art in that way for a long time. But now as an adult, I got to say, being able to draw, being able to express a talent openly is really cool. I mean, when I go traveling, for instance, I take my sketchbook with me everywhere, and people will pull out their cell phones and start taking pictures of things. I pull out my sketchbook, and you'll have people coming up to you and trying to sell you tourist items and things. And as soon as you've got a camera, they know you're a tourist and they try to sell you something.
Right.
The minute they see me with a sketchbook and I'm drawing them, they put all that stuff away and they're just interested in seeing what it is that I can do. And it's a weird way. It's like a language that everybody speaks. And it's a great way to actually get to who a person is very, very quickly. So if someone sits next to you and starts looking at your sketchbook, you find out a lot more about them than if they're trying to sell you a bottle of water or a postcard of some sort. It's a great language. And I think as kids, we tried to find it to communicate who we are. And as an adult, I'm just finding it as a way to break all barriers. Art is such an amazing way to communicate these days.
Absolutely true. I couldn't agree with you more. And music also works like that as well.
Yeah. Music, anything in the arts, right?
Yeah.
It's really like for me, when I see that, I feel a kinship with anyone who uses artistic abilities. And I don't say talents because I feel like people work hard at these things. It's not as though they were born being able to sing beautifully or draw beautifully. It's things that you work hard at, but if you work hard at it well enough, people will recognize you for it. And it's like I said, it's just a really great way to communicate who you are in this world.
I want to go back to your drawing and your art and just ask you a question on a little bit of the origins of it. Once you started drawing and you got to the point where you knew you were good, how do you market something like that if you don't write a story that goes along with them?
Oh boy. I mean, I guess you're basically asking how one even gets into the field of freelance, of being an illustrator, being an artist. It's a different path for everyone, right? For me, I think it's funny because like I said, I come from an Asian family, and I, three brothers and one sister, and all of us had these expectations put on us to have very professional jobs. Like the goal of every Asian parent is to never have to pay for professional services again. So my sister's a doctor, my other brother's in business, my other brother's an engineer, like something in which could be considered valuable careers. And to be an artist was never really in that line of what people expected. But for me, I think I kind of had no choice in going in that direction. And gosh, I'm losing thread. Sorry what the question was, but I can't imagine how else I was going to enter into this world. Believe it or not, I was supposed to be the lawyer in the family, and I got through 2 years at UCLA before I decided I didn't think that was for me. I didn't think that I could continue along that way and feel authentic to myself, I guess. That sounds so pretentious, doesn't it? I don't mean to sound pretentious, but
no, it doesn't. You're being honest. Nothing pretentious about being honest. No, my question just was if somebody is also an artist and they draw, but they don't create a story like a comic book or something like a complete package. How do you just sell your drawings?
Well, you do a lot of things. Gosh, on the olden days, you would make postcards of your work and send them to art directors. Nowadays, with social media, with Instagram, anywhere you can put your stuff online. That's how people discover who
Oh,
the next
okay.
big artist is. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I think a lot of art directors and editors spend their times just trolling websites and looking through Instagram pages and seeing who's doing what and who's got what artwork out. And usually these days, that's enough for you to get noticed and sort of picked out. I've been doing this for about 20 years, though, so I sort of went through the old-fashioned way of sending postcards and mailing them out to art directors.
Okay.
But I worked in animation for a few years, and it sort of bought me enough time to take my time into breaking into the art field. And my goal early on was to sort of meet up with editors and art directors who were brand new like me, who didn't really have a strong firm hold in the publishing world yet. And I would have them take risks with me, and then I would, hopefully do well by them. And as they rose up in the ranks, I would rise up in the ranks. And the higher up in the industry they got, they would just sort of take me with them. So that's kind of the old-fashioned way of getting into it. But man, these days you just need an Instagram feed and you're good to go, really.
Well, I guess that's encouraging because I've always thought of technology as a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, you can anybody can set up an account and put your work up, whatever it is. On the other hand, you're competing with 25 billion other people who are out there too,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you're not alone in the room, that's for sure.
yeah. It's hard to get noticed, I think, these days.
Yeah.
But it's a little bit like if you're listening to somebody singing in an audition, the ones that stand out from the ones who just can do it. And I think art, illustration, in that way, it's pretty easy to recognize the standouts, the ones who know what they're doing, from the ones who every once in a while get an amazing painting and then can't consistently keep that up. I think for art, it's very easy to spot. Writers, I think, have a much harder time with that because you can sometimes get 30, 40 pages into a manuscript and still not get what the gist of the story is about. It's very hard to hit it out of the ballpark in the first page of a manuscript. So I think illustration, as tough as you're possibly making it seem, I think it's still a lot easier to recognize the ones who know what they're doing from the ones who are just kind of getting in there.
We've got about 2 minutes left, and I want to just touch on your book. Your book is called Outside Inside,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Here.
about the. Oh, there you go. Okay,
There it
great.
is. Here.
So you did all the illustrations, and the story is about COVID, right?
It's I don't think it is
It
about
isn't?
COVID.
Okay.
It's about I've never even mentioned the words COVID, lockdown, none of that. I'm going to describe it as a time capsule of the year 2019 to 2020. It's sort of a collection, a group collection of everything that we all experienced this past year, and it's an attempt to show as many different perspectives as possible. So there were a lot of us who did fine by lockdown. We enjoyed actually working from home. We had an extra year with our kids. We liked making meals with everybody. The hardship we came up with was, what do you cook every day? And then there were other people who really struggled during this time, who lost their jobs, who couldn't communicate with their grandparents or their uncles or aunts, who lost somebody incredibly special to them, all within an isolated period in which we couldn't go out and comfort each other. So there's a whole spectrum of feelings that we all went through, and I think it's very hard to process all of that. And in fact, I think most of us aren't quite ready to process it. We're still just digging our way through this. And this book was written right at the beginning of lockdown, and it was me sort of in response, a shell-shocked response to what was happening with the world, and making observations as I was walking around my neighborhood with my sons and my husband, seeing things like the people who were keeping together were really kids who were making these signs that they were putting in windows. And it was incredibly uplifting to walk about and to see these signs that would say, we're all in this together, we can do this. And it touched me enough to go and start collecting some of these images of these early days of lockdown. Things like teddy bear hunts, when people would put teddy bears in windows for kids to find. Or do you remember when we would go out at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night and make a lot of noise and start screaming and yelling for healthcare workers and for frontline emergency workers to show our support? Like, there was a period of time, I think early on, where I felt like the whole world sort of came together and showed sort of the best of us, like the best in our humanity. And that's what this book did. It went and I collected as many of those memories as I could. And now it's timely because it's a year later. And who would have thought that we'd still be doing this a year later? We thought it was going to be done in a couple months. And I think the response I've gotten from the book, from so many people who've read it, have been, I didn't think I was ready for reading this yet, but it hit me like a gut punch and it made me cry. And I think that's good. It's remembering again why we made these sacrifices, why we did the things we did. That's not normally something a children's book is supposed to do. And it's funny that people call this a children's book. I just don't see it as that. I just see it as a timeline of our year. And when people look at it, that's what they see. I think adults respond to it just as much, if not more, than children do. But that's it. That's my book, Outside Inside.
Well, I tell you, just to close it up, that was probably the most positive statement I've heard about this past year with COVID-19, because most of the people that I've had on this show haven't had anything nice to say about it. And that was absolutely the most positive thing. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I'm glad you gave me the opportunity to talk about all this. And yeah, thank you.
We do have to wrap it up, unfortunately. Do you have a website that you want to give out? People can come and check you out, check out the book.
I do. I'm horrible on social media, as you can probably tell. But I do have a website. It's www.LeUyenPham.com. It's LeUyenPham.com. Otherwise, I think I am on Facebook and Instagram, but I don't check it very much, so don't get me there.
Okay, we'll send everyone to your personal website then.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you
right,
so much,
great.
Doug, for having me on.
Absolutely, my pleasure.